Hey guys, Mr. Whitman here. Welcome to one of the first recorded lectures that we're going to have going forward, where I'm going to go ahead and talk over the PowerPoints. So it'll be a little bit easier for you guys to follow along. That way you're not trying to read it on your own and you have someone like my voice to actually guide you through it. That being said, since it is recorded, if you need to pause for whatever reason, or if you need to fast forward or rewind, it's just easier for you to do. So before we get started, I would highly recommend that you guys get out a piece of paper or you guys get your notes out and you just follow along and you write the notes. I can't collect them because you need them for the assignments and the quizzes coming up. So there's no point in assigning them because it's either you're doing it or you're not, and there's no way for me to check it. So that being said, please follow along, please pay attention. It's a little bit easier than you reading it on your own. And that being said, let's get started. So the first slide here is going to be World War I and the Russian Revolution. That's going to be the chapter, and it's only going to be around 10 years. So from 1914 to 1924. So lesson one is going to be World War I begins. Now class, we've already talked about this ad nauseum, right? What does ad nauseum means? That means we just talked about it a lot. We talked about it for, weeks at this point. So we're going to go ahead, and this picture is a famous picture of the person who gets assassinated from Austria. If you guys remember who he is, I'll give you guys a second to remember, try to remember. That's going to be Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife right here. This is before he sadly gets assassinated. Okay, so we're going to move on. So this is going to go ahead and be your guys' vocabulary words over here on the side. So it's going to be Entente, militarism, Alsace and Lorraine, ultimatum, mobilize, neutrality. You should know what all of these are already. So these are going to be the questions that are going to be addressed in terms of our standards, California standards, or I should say Common Core standards. So describe how imperialism, nationalism, and militarism pushed Europe close to war. We should already be able to answer that. Identify the key event that sparked World War I, the singular event that really ignited the entire thing, and to trace how the alliance system drew nations into the war. Again, class, these are all things that we can answer. So let's start it off from the very beginning. European powers form alliances. By 1914, Europe had enjoyed a century of relative peace. Idealists, right, people who hope for the best in future, that's what idealists are, hoped for a permanent end to the scourge of war, right? Scourge is just the nightmare of war. It's the suffering, it's the killing. That's what scourge means. So they want to end it permanently. International events such as the first modern Olympic Games in 1896 and the first Universal Peace Conference of 1899 were steps toward keeping the peace. Quote unquote, the future belongs to peace, said French economist Frédéric Passé. Frédéric Passé is going to be very, very influential going forward in history. What I'm saying by this, in 1914 is kind of where he starts becoming a very popular economist. But going forward, he's going to have really good predictions on how the world is going to shape up. And there's a reason why I'm giving you guys this quote, because it's not necessarily going to be correct, as you could see, because we know after World War I, we have about a 10-year period of prosperity. America is going to go ahead and become a global superpower. But as soon as things start to look good, World War II is going to happen, right? So the future isn't necessarily going to belong to peace, right, class? So things are looking up, though. Things are looking good. This is going to be the first Olympic Games of the modern era held in Athens, Greece in 1896. 100 years later, I believe, in 2004, so 98 years later, I believe 2004. Yeah, 2004. Okay, just making sure. Athens is going to host the Olympics again, Athens, Greece, because it's going to be Sydney 2000. So 92 is Barcelona, 96 is Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States. 2000 is Sydney, Australia. Then it's Greece, and so on and so forth. You guys get the point, right? But this is going to be the first time where all of these nations around the world are going to put away their differences and actually have something nice, like the Olympics, right? Here is just going to be an example of that. Now, major causes of World War I. So, right, class, I made these for you in the class, not knowing all of this stuff was going to happen. So quickly, guys, pause the video real quick. Just look at the questions, try to answer them in your head. If you can, if you have a piece of paper for your notes, try to, answer them. You guys should know what these questions are. These two questions are who made up the Triple Alliance and who made up the Triple Entente. Okay, we'll pause it, review, resume, whatever. Let's move on. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, tensions were increasing among the great powers of Europe. Aggressive nationalism, economic competition, imperialism, militarism, and an arms race all helped fuel an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust. A Parisian, which means from Paris, France, newspaper presented the view of imperialism. The caption says, "France freely gives Morocco civilization, peace, and wealth." Well, class, we already know what's going to happen with Morocco. We already know how France is going to view African territories, African countries in terms of imperialism. Now, class, quickly, why do you think France would want to say that? Why do you think a newspaper in Paris would want to say, you know what, we freely give Morocco civilization, peace, and wealth, right? They're trying to say, if it wasn't for us, Morocco wouldn't be civilized, there would be no peace, and they'd be poor. Now, do you think that's true, or do you think that it's accurate? And if you do think it's accurate, how accurate do you think it is? Right, just something to keep in the back of your mind. Now, this is going to be very interesting, class. This is also found in the book. It's straight from your book. This is going to be a perfect representation of the growing arms race and this militarism. As you guys can see there, you're going to see the major powers of Europe and what they have in terms of a military or a built militaristic power. So if we look, Austria-Hungary is going to have a ton of troops. But in the grand scheme of things, they're not, right? 2.3 million standing army is a lot. However, it's not going to even get close to the amount of people that Germany and Russia are going to have. France is going to have 4.5 million. That's nothing to scoff at. But if you look at Britain, Britain has less than 200,000 standing soldiers. It says there in little brackets, Britain had an all-volunteer army. So that's no draft. That's kind of how an army we have today where you sign up yourself, you volunteer for it. Right, class? These troops in these other countries are assigned to do that, right? It's kind of like how we have a draft, right, where you're assigned, you have to do mandatory military time. However, class, what I want you guys to look here is I want you to look at the Navy, right? The Navy is at the sea. Britain is going to have a very low soldier count. Well, why? Well, if you look at a map, Britain is very small. It's an island. How do you protect an island? You make sure that there's no boats that have access to you. That's why if you look across the screen, their battleships and their submarines are going to just completely outnumber everybody except for French's submarines, right? But at this time, they're going to completely control the seas. Okay? That's the reason why they have such a small group of people. And of course, you look at Russia, they don't have a navy at all because they don't need it, because they don't really have access to water in Europe. They have access to water in the Pacific, closer to China and Japan and all that. But when it comes to having a navy presence, they don't have it. They don't have access to water. So now let's talk about the Balkans, right, class? We talked about this before. The Balkans are going to be in the Eastern bloc, the Eastern middle bloc of Europe. So if we look here, this is what the Balkans ultimately becomes, kind of. Right, so as Bismarck had predicted, the Great War began in Eastern Europe. A regional conflict between tiny Serbia and the huge empire of Austria-Hungary grew rapidly into a general war that would mark one of history's significant turning points. So if we look over here, right, class, this is already after. No, it's not. So it's just I thought it was a map, I'm sorry. But it's actually kind of a map of where most of these ethnicities live. So the Balkans is going to be one massive area, usually controlled by different groups at different times. However, the thing that doesn't change is the people inside it don't change. I'll give you guys a perfect example of this. When we talk about Mexican history, Mexico has a very long history of kind of getting conquered and invaded and re-establishing their government, and then they lose their government, and then someone else comes in, right? But the thing that doesn't change, the one constant, is always going to be the people living there. They're going to view themselves as Mexican, right? doesn't matter what flag is flying above them, but they're going to view themselves as, well, I'm here. This is who I am. I speak Spanish. I'm Catholic, whatever, fill in the blanks, right? I eat tortillas. I drink tequila, right? You're this culture. That's who you are. That's going to be very similar, but taken to an extreme in the Balkans, right? The Balkans are going to be even more territorial. They're going to be more to themselves. So if you look here, if you try to zoom in right there, you're going to have the different types of people and what languages they're going to speak. And it's just going to be a very, very tense area because it's going to be a constant changing of the guard. The people in charge of this area is constantly going to change. People are going to try to enact different religions and they're not going to want that. So they're going to fight back. Oh, now you have to speak French. Well, I don't want to speak French. I speak Russian or I speak Slavic. Well, now you got to speak, Spanish. Well, I don't want to speak Spanish, or now you got to speak Italian. So these are constantly going to be changing at all times. And it's going to be very, very difficult. So why is it called a powder keg? Well, a powder keg is just a big barrel full of gunpowder. And you just need one little spark to ignite all of it. Pretty much a big bomb. So that's what they're going to call the Balkans. One little thing is just going to light everything up. And everything's going to go boom. And that's essentially what's going to happen. And it's going to happen here. This is going to be the first photographs of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austrian throne. This is the aftermath of his assassination. This is going to be the beginning, the one singular event that starts World War I. He's going to get assassinated. Austria is going to declare war on Serbia. The reason why they declare war on Serbia is because a Serbian assassin is going to be the person who kills him. Now, that's going to lead to an alliance system, which we've already talked about, class. Let's take a look at your notes. Right, you should know who's allied to. So go ahead, pause the video, look at it, try to figure out. France is allied to fill in the blank. Just think about it in your head, okay? So going forward, this is just going to be a very good photo of Russia trying to mobilize their army. So as we talked about before class, like now a month ago, as time flies, right? We talked about how Russia was kind of late to the party. I shouldn't say party, but they were late to the war, but they got there and they moved all their forces in significant time. Well, the reason why is because of their vast use of these horses. These war horses were very, very instrumental in getting their alliance, but getting their army from point A to point B, right? They took really good care of the horses. Now, class, this is what's going to be, here's a hint. Just copy this on the assignment and you get it. You get 100%, right? This is going to be what the alliance system leads to. So this is going to be pretty much the teams, right? You're going to have your Central Powers, your allies, and then just your neutral countries. So for example, Spain is technically neutral, right? Most of Africa is neutral. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, Switzerland's always neutral. And then you're going to have everyone else. Now, this is going to be your quiz class. This is where I'm going to go ahead and stop. You guys go ahead on those same notes. If you want to do it on a separate piece of paper, you do have to turn these in. I went ahead and I put these on the new document that I shared with you guys. So go ahead and type in these questions. So for example, you'd see 7.1 PowerPoint questions. You would type in number 1. The European nation formed 2 great alliances because they wanted to. Press pause, answer the video, write it down. Right, number 2, imperialism increased tensions in Europe because. Pause the video, answer it, so on and so forth, right? You're going to do this for the questions. Each PowerPoint's going to have about 3 or 4 questions. Answer them in that document sheet, and that's it. Well, class, hopefully this was a lot easier than you just reading it on your own, and I'm going to go ahead and do these for all of the PowerPoints that I assign with you going forward. The only issue is I don't know where to put them or organize them on your guys' Google Classrooms, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out as we go. And if anything, I'll just send you the Mr. Widman YouTube account. That way you can see everything in playlists. That'll be easier for you too. We'll figure it out. But if there's any issues with the audio, if there's any issues with the video, please let me know, and I'll try to fix it as fast as I possibly can. Okay, class? Thank you. See you next time.